So what can you eat on the Israel National Trail if you don't carry a stove? Today I'm going to show you what is in my food bag. Besides Today we're going to see what is in my food bag. I like to use a food bag like this because when I go into town, even sometimes for slack packing, I like to have a bag that I can wear on my back. It's even nice for when you want to carry your food to a campfire ring that's far away from your tent and you have your hands full of water bottles or whatever you're carrying. It's nice to have something you can just put on your back. So I just use this old bag from my gym. It's really nice because it looks pretty respectable to walk through a town with this on, because I can just turn it around. Doesn't really show the dirt, and I can wear it on my back and I just look like one of the other tourists. So the way that I like to organize my food in here is I just have 3 bags. Sometimes they're just like store bags, sometimes I use a Ziploc, and I put all my breakfast foods in one, lunches in one, and dinners in one, and that's the way that I can ration my food. I don't carefully plan each meal when I resupply. So when I hiked the Israel Trail, I just went to the store, bought carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and a few fresh things. And I kind of know by now, after hiking many hundreds of miles, what my body needs. So I don't have to exactly plan each meal. I just know how much of each thing I'm gonna need for a certain amount of days. So this is for about 5 days, and it's not a perfect ratio of protein to carb and so forth, but the fact is life is never going to be perfect. So it's afternoon right now. I usually pack my food bag in the morning with lunch or dinner on top, because that's what I'm going to need next. We've got some tortillas, more tortillas, pretzels, sunflower seeds, what is this called? Halva, which is a sesame seed and honey treat. It's very high in protein, but it's also very sweet. Some dried fruit, this is dates, and some bars. So, when I started the Israel Trail, I knew that the food in Israel is expensive, and I knew since I was starting in the desert that it would be a little bit hard for me to find a big variety of foods along the way, because the towns were a little smaller and fewer between. So I wanted very light food, and I wanted to also start out by taking some American foods along. So I brought from home, I brought my ration for the first 5 days plus protein for the first 2 weeks. It worked out really well for me to fly to Israel with food that I already know how to cook, and I know how my body responds to it, because it just made my start on the trail a little bit easier. I didn't have to go to the grocery market on the first day quickly before I hit the trail and try to find things that I didn't know what they were, or figure out what proteins would be available and how much I would need for really strenuous hiking. I could take foods that I already knew how much to eat for the activity I was doing, and it just made my hike a little bit easier. I also have peanut butter, and you can actually find this Skippy's peanut butter in any large grocery store in Israel. They also have obviously off-brand, like store-brand peanut butter and other nut butters, a very big wide selection. So this I didn't actually buy Skippy's when I was overseas. I just have this because that's what I had at home to show you. Hummus was also something that I ate on the trail. And tahini. For lunch, I would eat a good bit of carbs and fats because the fats would be slow burning and I could burn it off as I went. So I would take foods that I could eat with a spoon and put them in my pocket like this, but on the other side of my pack, my stretchy pouch. And then as I was hiking that day, I would just go ahead and pull it out and eat it with a spoon. The three things that I like to look for when I look for foods to eat for lunch, although really it's many snacks throughout the day, is something that is easy to eat while I'm hiking. I like to keep moving, especially if I have blisters or a very long day, or if on the Israel Trail I try to get all the major climbs for the day done before the hottest part of the day, because I'm able to climb better when the air is a little cooler. So I like to get food that I could eat while I'm hiking. It makes boring sections more interesting if you go and snack and walk at the same time. And also, it's a good way to make friends. You can eat your little snacks, hand it out to other people, and it saves time. I like to eat with a spoon because it's more sanitary. So I would often take for lunches peanuts or other nuts and seeds are easy to come by in Israel. And obviously sesame seeds and peanuts are some of the cheapest that are available in the supermarkets that I saw. You can also find any other nut, anything really that you want. The second important thing for me when I was shopping for lunches was salty snacks, because in the environment in the desert, a very hot environments, you want to make sure you replenish your salt every day. So a trick I learned in the past is to get a bag of chips or crackers that are going to break anyhow and just wrench them down a little bit with your hands and put them in a quart Ziploc like this, because they're going to break in your pack anyhow. So you may as well break them down and then you can just eat them with a spoon. In Israel, you can get wonderful pitas. They're fresh made in the morning, and so if you get to the store in the morning, they'll be nice and warm. So soft, so good. I liked to get enough for 2 or 3 days. After 3 days, they started to mold for me since they have no preservatives. So if you're doing a 5-day ration, you would want to get something else that would last longer for the last few days. So I would often eat a pita with tahini inside, or peanut butter, Nutella, or hummus. So I don't carry fresh food with me when I'm through hiking unless it's going to be eaten in the next 24 hours, simply because the wait is not worth it to me. In the desert, it was a harsh environment, and it's just not worth it for me to be slowed down by having foods that my body really doesn't need for that short amount of time. I could easily just wait until I was through the desert and then enjoy more special foods after. One thing that was hard to find in the desert section of the trail was Ziploc bags. Most small grocery stores did not offer them. So we learned to be creative and use other things. This is the way you can prepare your tortillas in the morning. If you want to have them ready to go and eat, you can just put the filling inside, wrap them up like this, and then put them back in the bag so that you can easily fit it in the side pouch and just pull it out, munch on it whenever you want to. This is the only ration for Israel that I actually purchased tortillas. Grocery stores and supermarkets in Israel have wonderful handmade bread, and that was always my preference. I would look for a kind that looked crusty enough that it would not mold for the duration of my ration, and then I would just break that off and put a little bit of whatever I wanted to on it, Nutella or peanut butter or tahini or hummus, and that is what I usually ate, and it was very good. There were some of my favorites were rye and also some whole wheat crusty bread. So good. So this halva is a treat. So this is made out of sesame seeds and honey. Some varieties have other ingredients in them. I'm not able to read Hebrew, so I don't know exactly what is in this. I just took it out of the packaging and poured it into this Ziploc to be easier to eat. It's a very sweet treat, very high in protein and calories. It's very smooth. It has a little bit of like a sugary crunch. I don't know if you can see the little crystals in it, but you can buy bars, halva bars, that are in all different flavors, or you can buy tubs of this, like a plastic tub, and eat it out with a spoon if you want to. When you are in the supermarket, the place to look for this is typically with the peanut butter and jelly area. That's where you'll find the tub, and this one came in like a plastic bag. It was like a little pouch about this large, kind of like a very large energy bar. It's looked at as a sweet treat or more like a dessert typically. It's very good. Food is expensive in Israel. I bought these tortillas. They were the cheapest kind, obviously. They're the most unhealthy kind. And there's 5 in this pouch. And it was just under 7 shekels, which would be just under $2 for those 5. And that was one of the cheapest wraps or bread items that I could find in a large supermarket. When you're getting to the end of a long day, or when you're very tired, you need a little bit of a sugar boost, I like to carry these wonderful dates that you could buy anywhere, or chocolate. You could buy chocolate for the same price as you would buy it in the US, and it was much better tasting. So I would often carry 2 chocolate bars, and if I didn't have chocolate, I would carry dates. You don't want to carry too much of a sweet treat because it's heavy and it doesn't really give your muscles much of anything in the long run. Just gives your body a little boost of sugar, and that's about it. One thing to remember with dates is they do have pits in them. Why did I decide to hike the Israel Trail without carrying a stove? Every time that I take a hike, I like to try a new skill, and I have never done a thru-hike or an extensive long hike without a stove before. I wanted to try the skill because I feel like it's a really helpful skill when you want to have a lighter pack, or for times when your fuel sources are uncertain. It's really good to be able to have confidence that you can eat good food and filling food without needing to cook it on a stove. So I wanted to experiment with what foods will fill me up and keep me going on a hard adventure that don't need to be cooked. I knew that in the Negev desert I would need to carry some extra weight because of the water situation. So that is another reason why I thought it might be good not to have a fuel canister in my pack too. Here is my spice kit. So I like to carry a few spices in my food bag. I keep in here also matches and drinks. Right now, the only drink that I have is this instant coffee. The way that I drink this is mid-morning or at lunch when I have my break on the trail. I would get a water bottle that has about this much water still in it. Then I would pour this in. Sometimes you can add a little bit of sugar, which I also have in my bag. Then you just gently shake it and drink it. It's actually pretty good. It's like an iced coffee. I was able to find this instant coffee in a lot when I shopped for just a few very small things on the first day before I started hiking on the trail. It's very common to be able to find instant coffee. You can find it in any large supermarket. So, sugar, cinnamon. I carry cayenne pepper because whenever I'm in a cold environment, I like to know that I'll be able to heat my body up very quickly. Cayenne is one of the best ways that I've learned how to heat my body up. I just sprinkle a little bit onto my food, eat it, and within a few minutes my circulation is hopping. Turmeric, I learned that it is really helpful for inflammation, and because I do struggle with tendonitis and I knew that it would be a little bit hard on my joints and my tendons to just go right into the Negev and start clambering over boulders on the very first day, I would take some of this each night on my food, and it tastes a little bit spicy. It went well with all meats, and it also made a very good curry when I mixed it with excuse me, a little bit of peanut butter and some tomato paste. Then I use these small Nalgene bottles for my salt, and you can actually buy ones that are half this size for your spices. So if you didn't have like handy little spice containers like this one, which I do like better because you can shake it out, you can use these. They're a little bit heavy because they're very strong, whereas these are a little lighter because the plastic is a little bit more thin. Keep my extra bags in here because bags are hard to come by, and just a lighter and a few matches. So, what did I make for dinners if I couldn't cook? That is the question on the streets. Well, like I said, I ate a lot of pizza. Wonderful pizza, I miss them. And I also carried 12 days worth of freeze-dried meats that I was field testing for Trailblaze Outfitters. I just gathered some different kinds of meat and seasoned them at home, tried them out on the freeze dryer, and all the ones that dried nicely I packaged in these single-serve Mylar bags. And then in the field, all I needed to do was just pour water in when I got to campsite and let it sit on a hot rock, and it would taste just like it was home cooked by the time I was ready to eat it, because the sun heated it up. And whether your water is cold or hot, freeze-dried meat rehydrates very quickly. I've already rehydrated it when the weather was below freezing, and it worked out just fine. I just put the bag against my skin so that the water would not freeze. And although it took a little longer, like 40 minutes, it was well hydrated and tasted wonderful. So this one here is sausage, which I made with vegetables. So what I would do is just pour in some water. You want to try to not pour too much water in, because your meat will taste better if it doesn't have extra water when it is done soaking. because that extra water just kind of takes the flavor out of it. So I just put in enough water. I just put in enough water to get almost to the top. Then I get the air out, seal it, and then I kind of squish it to be a little more even so it can heat up a little better, and I just lay it in the sun. I took all different sorts of meat along. I took chicken, trout, salmon, roast beef, sausage, and tuna along. And out of all of those, the salmon was the best. It was so fresh tasting. It just quickly hydrated even with cold water. And even after the sun had set and I didn't have the sun to heat the bag up, it just tasted really good. So that was my favorite. But the honest truth is that all of the meats did really, really well. They all hydrated well and they all had very good texture, even with the water being cold. So I would definitely take freeze-dried meat along again if I had a hike to do where I did not have a stove. I would definitely do this again. It was a huge success. Some campsites on the Israel National Trail do have firewood that other people have left behind. The only wood that is burned in the Negev is pallet wood or logs that somebody has brought in from some source outside of the reserve, but that's extremely rare because wood is very, very rare to come by. You would really never, ever, ever chop down a tree. Never. That's like unheard of and against the law, but it is very common to burn pallet wood. So I would always go around to the campfire rings at the campsites when I arrived and look for bits of wood, and if I found enough to have a fire, then I would just make a fire. And I carried this pot with me because I knew that even if I never could have a campfire on the trail, I knew I would want to cook in hostels, and sometimes hostels do not provide cooking equipment for you. They only provide a campfire ring or a stove. So I was always glad to have this because some cons and hostels did have a stove but no pots. If you have a friend who does have a stove and they're boiling water for their meal, you can also just kind of fold this pouch down, making sure it's clean, of course, and just put it inside their pot like this, like that, with the top folded down. And as they boil their water, it will also heat your food, and so that's a good way. It's a win-win situation. You can heat your food without slowing down their process. I had from home a few spicy chips that I took along to eat in the evenings because it does get very cold. I was very glad to have cayenne pepper along because I would season my food with it, and it would really warm me up to have that spice. More tortillas. Typically, like I said before, I would normally have eaten bread on the trail, the rye bread or the wheat crusty bread, the whole grain bread, the pitas. Oh, so good. But what I had in this ration left over from the Israel Trail was tortillas that I just chose to get because hiker hunger was really setting in, and I wanted to just buy a lot of whatever was the cheapest. For people who do have stoves, one of the most common things that you'll see them cooking is couscous, which is very cheap and it cooks very quickly. You can even cold soak it. I don't like couscous personally, and I don't like mashed potatoes. Those are two carbohydrates that you can make just cold soaked without cooking them. I had to evacuate the trail before I had a chance to try this idea, but my plan had been to learn how to make tabbouleh with the couscous. So it's very easy to get spices, oil, lemons, anything like that in the supermarkets. So I had planned to learn how to cold soak the couscous and just make it into a cold salad. and I think I would have really liked that, especially if I could chop up some vegetables and put it in. I think that would be a very good option for hiking without a stove. Another very cheap option is these canned sardines, and you can get all different flavors. These are in oil with chili. If it is in oil, it will give you a lot more calories for your money. So these you can put inside of bread or inside of a pita if you want to. Good old canned sardines. Wowzeroos, this is spicy though. Whew, mama. Look at those nice canned bones coming. So typically what I would do with that leftover oil would be to dip some crusty bread in there and eat it. But since I don't have any crusty bread, I guess I'll just drink it. I really like these tomato paste packages. They're only just under 2 shekels, and it's such a good addition to the freeze-dried meat pouch. Or I also learned to cold soak ramen noodles. The brand of noodle isn't quite the same in Israel, but it's very similar. It cooks exactly the same and hydrates the same as a ramen noodle. One thing I love about them is that you can eat them dry without cooking them, and it's very nice, like a salty, crunchy snack. Or you can even cold soak them. When I cold soaked the ramen noodles, I just poured some water over them and put them into a little pouch. I actually used an empty one of these pouches, and then I just set them in the sun, and I made sure to get them again before the sun went down so that the pouch would still be warm, and you could not even tell that they had not been cooked on a stove. They tasted just like ramen noodles you would cook at home and then sit on the counter and forget about them until they were a little bit cool. So just for a little bit of extra flavor, I like to carry one of these little packets along for a little something different. Tuna is also very commonly available anywhere. It's one of the most common proteins to be eaten on the trail. If you can find the tuna that's packaged in oil, you can make crispy tuna. One of the tricks that I learned when I was on the Appalachian Trail was to buy eggs when I was in a town and take them back to the campsite or the hostel and hard boil them, cool them down, and then carry them out with me on the trail the next day. Our friends on the Israel Trail said that they used hard boiled eggs on the 3rd day and they were fine. They never got rotten. I like to play it a little bit extra on the precautionary side, and I only carried mine for 2 days. But to be honest, the real excuse was I just like to eat them. And I was hungry. So whatever you decide to do, hard-boiled eggs are a really great source of protein, and they're very easy because they come in their own packaging. One thing with hard-boiled eggs is just to watch out that you don't crack them, because if they're cracked open, they could become rotten. So if you're carrying them in your pack, just make sure you put them in a place where they won't get bumped against each other. So we didn't talk about tahini yet, but this is the staple on the trail. Any place you go is going to have this. It may not look the same as this container. It comes in all different bottles. And so you may need to ask somebody if you're not quite sure where to find it or if you have the right thing. Just ask, because some are flavored and some are plain. So it's helpful to know that you're getting what you're looking for. You can see this was 15 shekels. Tahini is made out of sesame seeds, so it has quite a lot of protein. The heat does not bother it as long as you add nothing to the jar. It's a wonderful stir-in to anything you make. Once my freeze-dried meat ran out, I would sometimes get a few vegetables and dip it in the tahini, put it with pita. You can put it with anything, it's very good. You can also season it different ways, but what I wanted to show you was the cool the cool way that it gets thicker the more you stir it. You can see how runny that is. It's just like a really liquidy substance. That's just tahini with nothing added to it. I like this so much that even though I flew home with the full bottle, I had a hard time saving some for this video because I just wanted to eat it with everything. I like to drizzle it on a salad, drizzle it on curry, just drizzle it on anything. So you can see it's like super runny, like that. Now watch what happens when I add some water to it. Kind of hard to stir such a small amount, but you can see it becomes this thick paste if you add only a little bit of water. So it drizzles when it's just plain, but then when you add the water, it like thickens up like that. So it makes it the perfect thing if you would care to put it inside of a wrap. You could easily just go ahead and season it a bit. I love to add some lemon. Some people like to add garlic and other seasonings. Obviously, I don't really have a wide array of seasonings. We'll put a little bit of spice in there. Stir it up. And it's really easy. Just spread it on a tortilla. You can add in some cucumbers, which are a great trail stable vegetable to pack out with you. Peppers are great for the trail if you are wanting to carry some vegetables along. Tomato, whatever you like. You can add that in there, wrap it up, and there's your good little sandwich for the trail. Very stable. Just put it in the bag. Might need a little water to wash it down. So good. It does obviously taste very strongly like sesame seeds, so if you don't like sesame seeds, it's not the thing for you. Another food that I don't have in my ration that would typically be eaten for lunch or dinner is cheese. So anywhere in the world that you hike, crackers are a very common thing. So cheese and crackers is a staple trail food. You can ask for cheddar cheese in a supermarket in Israel, or just buy any cheese that you see that you like. If you get sliced cheese like I did, it will get soft and squishy and possibly go bad after a while of being in the hot sun. But if you can get a hard cheese like a block cheese, especially cheddar does really well, that will keep for days and days and days. I've already taken cheese out that kept for 2 weeks on the trail in the dead of summer. So cheese does really well. You can put it like I did with rye bread. I got Swiss cheese in a supermarket and ate it with rye bread for lunches. That was very good. You can buy sausages similar to our summer sausage, and you can put those with cheese and crackers. So there's many options of lunch and dinners, National Trail, I actually brought granola from the US that I had made at home. It was peanut butter granola and it had a bunch of nuts and seeds in it. It was very high in protein and nice and crunchy, so I would just eat it dry in the morning with a spoon. I ate that for the first 5 days, and then when we got to our first hostel, I actually baked a batch of granola there that I made out of things we bought at the supermarket. Looking back on that, I don't think it was actually cheaper than if I would have just bought granola at a larger supermarket. I think the price would have been pretty much the same. So that might be something to consider if you like granola, just to buy some. But it was nice to be able to put in the ingredients that I wanted to. So if you would decide to buy some granola but you feel it doesn't have enough protein, you can easily just buy a package of coconut or walnuts, anything that you like, and stir it in there. You could put in some raisins or eat it with peanut butter. Really, there's many things you can do to add more protein. Dry milk is hard to come by. I am not a fan of dry milk myself, so I didn't look for it, but if you're able to find that, of course, that's a great thing to add to granola. I splurged on the Nutella. This is the off-brand Nutella. This is the cheapest price that I found it, and that was all the way up in Arad, so it was out of the desert area where the food is more expensive in the south, and this was only just under 14 shekels. The reason I included Nutella in my breakfast ration was because we woke up anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30 each morning, when it's often very cold, sometimes windy, and dark. So I like to wake up and do my morning ritual and then sit in my sleeping bag just before packing up and eat my breakfast and eat my Nutella, and it gave me a little bit of a sugar boost and a mood boost to get out of the tent and get on my way. So I saved money by learning a trick from my friends who were also on the trail. Each night before I left the area where I was cooking dinner, I would prepare my oatmeal to soak overnight, and sometimes people do this even if they have a stove. It's to save their fuel for something more important, if you don't mind your oatmeal being cold. It's very common on the Appalachian Trail as well, although I didn't often do it because I usually had extra fuel on that trip. So this is about how many oats I would eat for one morning. You can buy oats that are cheaper than 7 shekels, but I got these because I liked that it was reclosable, so it just was handy for me. Then I like to put a few things from my spice bag in to the bag with the oats, so I would add a lot of this cinnamon and sometimes I had honey that I was able to find in a very small plastic bottle, but realistically sugar is going to be the cheapest sweetener that you'll be able to find. So after a while I just began carrying sugar in a small bag to save some money. And I like to also add salt, a little bit of salt to pretty much everything because we sweat quite a bit. Then you just add some water. It depends how soft you like your oats. I like to put in just enough that it would cover all of the oats. So I would rather have them extra soft than dry. I'm not too fond of dry oats unless they're toasted, like in granola. And you can mix it around a little bit if you want to. I prefer the rolled oats instead of the flaked instant oats, just because it's less slimy and I think it tastes a little better. So what I did would be to just place this bag then inside my pot, and then I would put my Nutella in there too, and I would put it just right inside of my pack. I kept my pack just right beside me under my vestibule. I never kept my food inside my tent when there was a threat of wild animals such as mice and small creatures like that that gnaw, because I know that they will gnaw right through your tent wall and then you'll have a damaged tent. So I preferred to put my food inside my pack. I would prefer to have a damaged pack than to have a damaged tent. As you may be able to see, my pack is very old. It's not a matter of safety, whereas my tent is a matter of safety because there was quite a bit of rain in the spring when I was on the Israel Trail, and the wind was very strong, and so if my shelter would have been damaged, it would have been a big problem, much bigger than just a hole in my pack that I could take a thread and sew it up. I did carry a bare rope on the trail, and I'm glad I did, because we did have quite a few animal pests, and it got worse as we went north because of the pandemic. There were fewer tourists, and so feral animals were much more aggressive than they would typically have been had they been able to forage in the trash cans and the dumpsters. There was no food in the trash cans, so they would come and be more aggressive with the hikers. And I have heard a good number of stories of hikers who have had their tents ripped or their food bags stolen as they continue their way north. So I would definitely hike the trail again with a bare rope again, just because I like the fact that if an animal just won't leave you alone, you can take your food and go hang it somewhere. One consideration I would make in the future would be to consider an sack. I think it would be worthwhile because the campsites are heavily used and there are a lot of mice and foxes. So it's been about 40 minutes now that this sausage has been soaking and laying in the sun. So I'm just going to open it and see how it looks right now. Oh wow. See, look how good that is. It's just like nice chili now. The bigger pieces of sausage are still crunchy in the middle, and it's definitely not warm, so the bits of fat that are in this meal, they kind of stick to the top of your roof, like when you're eating like a cold hamburger and the fat's kind of like gets on the roof of your mouth. So that's not too pleasant, but overall this is wonderful for how little effort it took for this to become a nice meal. I would definitely hike without a stove again. Hiking without a stove is going to be my new go-to.